The media's influence on public perception is undeniable. But what happens when that influence turns into manipulation? In a recent 60 Minutes interview, CBS edited Kamala Harris's responses in ways that cast her in a favorable light, while Donald Trump's coverage continues to highlight every misstep. As Trump's campaign gains unprecedented momentum, many are questioning whether biased media coverage is distorting voters' views and altering the course of the election. So, how deep does this manipulation run, and what effect does it have on voter confidence heading into the 2024 election? In this video, we'll unpack the controversy behind CBS's editing choices, explore the impact on both candidates, and dive into how media bias shapes public perception and elections. Let's dive in. In today's world, the media plays a significant role in public opinion and voter behavior, which can shape the electoral process. And when people watch the news to get up-to-date information, they expect accurate and truthful reporting. However, even slightly biased reporting can distort public perception and threaten the basic principles of democracy. By selectively framing stories or manipulating interview material, media sources can portray a false reality that distorts opinions rather than providing the truth. An example of this is the recent Kamala Harris CBS 60 Minutes interview. After CBS did a ridiculous broadcast of two different versions of Kamala Harris's response to a crucial query about American foreign policy, the uproar surrounding her appearance on 60 Minutes began. Many characterized Harris's ambiguous and vague response about Israel and U.S. diplomatic efforts in the episode as unclear and lacking in substance.
The work that we do diplomatically with the leadership of Israel is an ongoing.
However, to everyone's surprise, the initial response was substituted with a much more succinct and polished one that presented her as resolute and well-prepared when the 20 minutes heavily edited interview was released later on 60 Minutes. People were infuriated by this discrepancy and accused CBS of trying to sway public opinion by protecting Harris from public criticism. In response, Donald Trump took a strong stance, labeling the incident the biggest scandal in broadcast history, and accused CBS of meddling in the election. CBS's selective editing not only distorted Harris's performance, but also prevented viewers from seeing the real candidate they would be backing. Trump demanded the release of the full, unmodified transcript of the interview, insisting that the public should have access to it. CBS defended its editorial choices, claiming that the changes made to Harris's interview were standard procedures meant to keep the show inside the allotted time. Denouncing accusations of manipulation, the network highlighted that it had posted both of Harris's responses online. A lot of people saw CBS's actions as an attempt to shield Harris from criticism, which strengthened the idea that the media is biased. According to surveys, the media had been covering Harris more favorably than Trump, with a disproportionate amount of negative attention going to Trump. What many had suspected, that major media sources were not merely prejudiced but also eager to modify information to influence public opinion, seemed to be confirmed by the 60 Minutes interview. This episode brought to light the necessity of increased media responsibility and the significance of openness in political reporting. A large number of people started calling for more access to the uncut video and closer examination of media operations. Now, after Kamala Harris did the 60 Minutes interview, her voter confidence was severely damaged by her comments, particularly the way she handled the hurricane catastrophe and her statements about economic strategy, which drew harsh criticism. Harris's remarks on the hurricane were viewed by many as haphazard and unrelated to the seriousness of the situation. Many questioned her competency and empathy as she stammered through ambiguous words about equity and resource distribution rather than concentrating on concrete action plans. The public was annoyed, particularly those living in the impacted areas, who thought her answer lacked urgency and substance. Her remarks about unemployment have also caused controversy. Unemployment rates, according to Harris, were at all-time lows. However, this claim was fact-checked and found to be only partially true. While employment rates had risen for certain demographic groups, others, especially some minority groups, had not fallen to all-time lows. Her leadership credibility was further damaged by this selective presentation of the data, which gave an inaccurate impression of the state of the economy. Several perceived it as an effort to gain political points instead of offering an accurate analysis of the country's economic difficulties. Harris also made troubling statements about the ongoing confrontation between Israel and Hamas. In all her interviews, she struggled to articulate a clear U.S. foreign policy, and critics and supporters were puzzled by the administration's stance. She was accused of inconsistency and lack of leadership, as she was reluctant to make firm decisions on important foreign policy issues. This was especially damaging given the high stakes of war and the widespread expectations Americans have for clarity and decisiveness from U.S. authorities. Instead, Harris's comments were treated as meaningless platitudes, further damaging her reputation. These errors were met with an immediate and extensive outcry. Voters were beginning to mistrust Harris's capacity to lead. according to polls, and she was not seen as ready to take on important issues. Her popularity ratings have clearly suffered as a result of this breakdown in confidence, with many people who were on the fence about her now fully against her. Her diminishing support among voters is indicative of a larger discontent with her handling of both internal and foreign affairs. This rising public disenchantment is a reflection of her entire performance rather than simply a few isolated occurrences. After the controversial and almost useless interview, CBS found it wise to cut out 66% of the interview and give the public an equally messed up 20-minute clip. CBS has been doing this for years now, and their manipulation goes beyond simply biased headlines. It often involves completely rewriting narratives to provide positive pictures and hide negative ones. One of the sneakiest ways this prejudice manifests itself is through selective editing and framing, where networks such as CBS run some interview pieces while deleting others that would cast a negative light on their preferred candidates. Voters frequently rely on quick interviews and media excerpts to create their opinions of politicians, which is why selective editing is effective. It creates a misleading impression that the candidate is intelligent, receptive, and capable when only positive clips are shown. Harris found that this approach worked especially well. During the original interview, Harris was seen stammering and finding it difficult to respond directly. CBS, however, edited those remarks to make her seem more composed and knowledgeable. Not only is it deceptive, but it's intentional misrepresentation that prevents candidates from facing the consequences for their actual failings. In unscripted situations, Harris has repeatedly stumbled, offering vague responses filled with buzzwords that ultimately say nothing. Yet with the magic of editing, her stammering becomes smooth delivery. What the public receives is an artificially enhanced candidate, one who seems far more in control than she actually is. This is more than simply a presentation issue. It's a calculated move to deflect criticism and keep people from noticing the obvious inadequacies in her knowledge and lack of preparation that would otherwise be obvious in the absence of editing. In addition, partiality and unequal airtime are significant contributors to the way that a public opinion is shaped by media bias. Networks such as CBS give Harris and her campaign a lot more coverage, while at the same time reducing the exposure of opponents like Donald Trump. This discrepancy distorts the overall narrative, not simply the amount of information the public gets from each candidate. Positive media surrounds Harris's visits, and she's frequently asked polite follow-up questions that let her easily reiterate prepared talking points. On the other hand, Trump faces more tough questioning, and the media mostly focuses on scandals and unfavorable stories about his campaign. Even when Trump is given airtime, the tone is unmistakably hostile. Interviewers throw hardballs at him and frequently respond with skepticism, whereas Harris is given softballs that are meant to accentuate her strength or the version of her strengths that the media wants to present. Viewers are discreetly encouraged to support one candidate over the other by this mismatch in tone and airtime, which sends a strong message to them. Many have questioned Harris's readiness for high office as a result of her awkward performance in both public remarks and interviews. On the other hand, when networks such as CBS play favorites or gloss over bad scenes, it creates the appearance of skill where none exists. The complete picture is withheld from voters who mostly depend on these platforms for objective reporting and need it to make informed voting selections. Selective reporting that shields a candidate from criticism, reduces accountability, and keeps voters from thoroughly vetting candidates for public office. The damage to voter trust becomes even more evident when these manipulations are exposed. Following the CBS scandal, many voters voiced their disappointment, believing they'd been duped purposefully. There was a wave of cynicism regarding Harris's candidacy when it became apparent that the media sources may twist stories to support particular candidates. There was a noticeable movement in the polls, with those who were still unsure about her moving farther away from her out of concern that their initial impression of her performance was a hoax. While these revelations began to weaken Harris's support, Trump's campaign received an unexpected boost. It became a rallying cry for his followers, who saw the CBS rigging scandal as evidence of the bias they'd long suspected in the mainstream media. His base responded well to the message, and he gained new followers who were fed up with media manipulation. It's the responsibility of the media to present fair, fact-based coverage during elections so that voters may make well-informed decisions. On the other hand, the democratic process is tainted when selective editing is employed to convey misleading perceptions. In this instance, CBS's activities contributed to the rising distrust of media organizations in addition to misleading voters. Voters must trust the information they're given for democracy to work. In reaction to the CBS 60 Minutes incident, Donald Trump called this an outright assault on democracy, which is pretty much election interference. To provide voters with the complete picture, former President Donald Trump insisted that CBS publish the unedited interview transcript. This is another win for Trump because it clearly shows that the media is not only biased, but also deliberately attempting to damage his candidacy while enhancing Harris's reputation. All across the political spectrum, voters are demanding transparency and accountability, as well as access to uncut interview footage to make sure they're getting the facts straight. The fact that the media can carefully edit reality to fit their preconceived notions has left many feeling deceived and makes it virtually hard for voters to get an unbiased opinion of a candidate. Voters are increasingly demanding openness from media sources covering political candidates, as well as from politicians themselves, resulting in a growing need for balanced reporting. Now, polls show that this discontent is growing. In the wake of the scandal, polls have shown a sharp increase in voters who believe the mainstream media is biased. About 60% of respondents strongly believe that the media favors one candidate over another. Notably, Kamala Harris was singled out by 57% of respondents as a beneficiary of this prejudice. This has added to a general feeling of disenchantment with the political system and the media. Voters are becoming increasingly cautious about the extent to which the press affects elections, fearing that stories created in newsrooms rather than facts are influencing their choices. The dynamics of the campaign have changed as a result of this rising mistrust of Harris and CBS. Trump has been a victim of media manipulation, and his campaign has been a struggle against a system that is rigged to benefit the establishment as much as political rivals. His popularity ratings have increased substantially as a consequence, and many people who are on the fence are now moving in his direction due to their displeasure with media meddling. Meanwhile, Harris's campaign struggled to control the backlash against her. Voters and political analysts have been watching her closely because they believe she's shielded from media criticism, and without negative publicity, many have raised doubts about her ability to govern. Her popularity ratings have slumped because many voters felt CBS had misrepresented her in a deceiving manner. The apparent connection between the controversy and existing doubts about her leadership ability, especially in light of her other public missteps, has further damaged her reputation. This tragedy has brought attention to how urgently media accountability is needed. The precisely chosen sound bites and staged interview pieces that mainstream media feeds voters are no longer acceptable to people. Rather, the only way to guarantee they're making educated decisions is to have unadulterated, unfiltered access to interviews and events. There are those who question if other networks have also changed material to influence elections. Thus, the cry for responsibility goes beyond CBS. The aftermath from this debate indicates that the media ecosystem that shapes narratives to support one side over the other is no longer acceptable to voters. The CBS controversy has also rekindled discussions about the function of the media in democracies. Media outlets' willingness to modify material to manipulate public perception begs fundamental concerns about their accountability to the public. Not only is fair coverage a goal of the calls for accountability, but so is rebuilding confidence in the democratic process. Voters want to be sure that the information they're given is accurate, comprehensive, and free of manipulation or covert intentions. Voter confidence will keep declining until media organizations can show that they're conducting business in an open and equitable manner. Ultimately, this dispute is a potent reminder that democracy is predicated on trust. Voters must be tenacious in their demands for openness and the truth. And media outlets must be held responsible for their influence on public opinions. Voters' perceptions of the candidates and the media reporting them will probably be shaped by the aftermath from the CBS event throughout the duration of the election. It remains to be seen if this results in significant change or in further public disenchantment, but one thing is certain: the public will no longer tolerate media operations as normal. So what's your take on CBS's media manipulation? Do you think biased coverage is swaying elections? Share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to give this video a thumbs up if you found it insightful. Subscribe to our channel for more deep dives into pressing issues, and hit the notification bell so you never miss an update. Until next time, stay informed and stay curious.